that good? Should I start? I'm Liz Keefe. I want to welcome everyone to JK Contemporary. For those who are new here, we opened our doors in July after complete renovation of this historic schoolhouse, which was built in 1840. This show, Goldthread, is a series of paintings by Erin Hunt. It is our second show of the season, which will run till the end of this month. We will be mounting a group show of Fogo Island artists in October, and just want to thank everyone for coming today. I really appreciate it. It's a nice crowd for you. Okay. I'll introduce Robin Love first. She's behind the camera now. Robin Love lives and works in Bay of Islands, Newfoundland, Canada. She has exhibited at galleries and museums internationally and has received numerous project grants to create new work from foundations and public agencies. Her site-specific projects include large-scale multimedia installation titled The House Museum in her home in Gillams. The space transitioned into Bardo 29, an experimental contemporary art space, hosting artist projects, residencies, and annual public programs. In 2017, Robin launched an online series titled Small Things Brought Together. There are long-format conversations exploring the creative process with artists from all disciplines. Small Things Brought Together kicks off its 4th season today with its conversation with Erin Hunt. We're very proud that you're doing this. I think it's great. Now, Erin Hunt is a Canadian artist who lives currently on Fogo Island. She's lived here for about 10 years. This exhibition by Erin Hunt was created in the last few years or so, with the majority of the paintings completed during the pandemic. Stories and images associated with plants and their healing properties led to the development of a new visual language explored in the paintings in this exhibition. Hunt's visual references include historical narratives, children's books, medieval paintings and writings, and everyday things found in her studio. Her painting explores image making as a generative conversation between inner and outer landscapes, and reflect on the interconnection of objects and images. Last year, Erin received a generous grant from the Canada Council for the Arts. Hunt's work has been exhibited in Canada and internationally, and has been acquired by private and public collections, including the city of Ottawa. Okay. Thank you for being here, everyone. And Robin, you can take the seat. And I hope we will all enjoy our talk.
Thank you, Liz, so much, and thank you for inviting me to lead the conversation with Erin. I'm really excited to talk to you about your work. And as Liz said, the way I think of Small Things Brought Together is it's about creative process. So, and it's a long format conversation, so we have time. We have time to think, pause, double back, and it's focused on the process. So, yeah. So thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much for doing this. I was thinking about giving a talk, and it felt like the universe brought you here to help me, because it's so hard to talk, to paint in silence and stillness, and then to suddenly speak about it. And I think it was Virginia Woolf who said that painters especially, should never speak, because something gets lost. So I'm kind of, I'm nervous about it, but I'm so glad that you're here. It feels like a great, the fact that your program and your project is about process is fitting, because that's how I approach everything.
Yeah.
It's really the focus.
Yeah. before we get into it, is there anything more from your background that you want to share that would help to give any more context, or we can get right in?
I think maybe there are a few people who don't know me, but most of you probably have a sense of my background. I moved here 10 years ago from New York, but I'm originally from Ottawa. And so I've been working for the last 10 years, starting with just working out of the house. I had young kids when I arrived, so there's been a kind of growth in terms of the size of the space I work in and the size of the work now. So yeah, that's followed me over the last 10 years living here. I don't know if there's much more to say about, like, we can launch right in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's definitely something I think you just touched on a bunch of things. One, moving here from New York City, how has that affected your work, having children, moving out of the house into a studio, and then, yeah. That's a lot.
It is, yeah. So before we moved, I was working out of our apartment in Brooklyn, and so kind of a similar scenario in some ways. I didn't have the resources to have a space outside of the house or the home, and my kids. I had been working in architecture offices, actually. That's even before I had Ingrid, my oldest daughter. And so when I had my children, I was trying to just carve out space every, chance I got. And the first thing I did was I was drawing, I was just starting to draw other people's sculptures. So just, it felt like I wasn't sure why, but I was kind of drawn to objects that had been handled, but also the documentation of those objects, because that was I suddenly wasn't leaving the house very often because I had young kids, so I was looking at books more and wanting to be making work, but feeling a little bit like, well, the resources are limited, so this is what I've got. So I was already, just kind of carving out space, and then when we moved here, it was a job opportunity for Kingman, my husband, and my daughter was 2, my son was 5 months old when we moved here, and we didn't know anybody, and we were, I was doing motherhood, which is already so crazy and so new and so difficult and challenging, but beautiful too, but you know what I mean. So again, I was doing the same thing, but when we moved here, I was starting to look around in the landscape and just taking walks with the kids and finding things on the ground, even just garbage, plastic and rocks and shells, and then I would do small watercolors or drawings of those. And so that was kind of like the beginning of my time here. And really, but having always the feeling like these are not really the fullness of what I want to be doing. It's sort of like what I can do right now. It's in the moment and with this, the time.
Yeah. So, well, you referenced that in the statement on the wall about encountering plants on the walks, but I feel like before we get into this, I want to maybe frame the rest of the conversation on this idea of the sacred, which when I first came here last week, Meliz said, well, let's meet at the gallery. We met here and we walked in, and Meliz said, this to me is a sacred space. No, I'm going to cry. And I knew what she meant, I can feel it. And then Erin's work is exactly correct for a sacred space. And I hadn't read the Rumi poem that you have on the wall text, so I hope everyone will. and you reference a God, and your statement about sort of things coming through you and moving through you, and a kind of awareness. And so as you hear all of that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. I really feel like that means so much to me, because I think working, any kind of work where you're paying attention for long periods of time to something, sorry, I'm getting verklempt. It does feel sacred. And it's that thing of just being in relationship with what you've got, what is. And I think the gift of Fogo Island is that there was space given to me in some way, that kind of opened up so that I could see things better or feel things more clearly or something. So that, there was the recognition that everything is sacred, that even garbage is sacred. You know, like if it's coming into resonance with my experience, what's inside and what's outside is a relationship, and it's sacred because we're part of this. We're not separate from the totality. And yeah, that was a big kind of something that Fogo Island gifted to me, I feel. And so, yeah, I guess I've been kind of like gaining more trust and confidence with just, okay, so I have a body that's, it's not just the mind, it's a totality, and it's picking up on so many things in the world, in the stuff in my studio, in my life, in my inner sort of feelings and thoughts and emotions, and all of it is, we can choose to pay attention to certain things and not other things, and that has felt really freeing, because then it becomes so simple. Actually, I can just look at a scrap of paper and feel like, I could just make a drawing of that, and that, why judge that if it feels like something to get the hands moving, and to start that relationship. The trust is that eventually it can lead to something that's substantial, or taps into that mysterious thing that's behind it all.
I highly recommend you look in the vitrines, by the way, because I think that really, gives a sense of that process, and that reverence for a scrap of paper or a piece of plastic on the ground. And I love that you brought up the word trust, because for me your work also feels very founded in trust.
Well, that's it. I think back, like in my 20s after art school, I felt so, there were less, I don't know, it was less problems in me or something. And so there was a freedom of like that beginner thing of just, I could paint freely, quite large, and I wasn't judging myself, and I could always start a new one. But then over the years, something happened. It was like I was becoming more worried that it wasn't really the right approach, like that you have to know what you're doing before you can do it. That was the trouble I came up against, that I needed to have some kind of a subject already determined, without realizing actually the way I constitutionally work is that the subject is found as I'm working, and the painting itself is a surprise, and it can like take me down the path of what it eventually becomes. So it's like building the subject or finding it. And so it really is like, because of practice and doing it, that I've now I feel like I can settle into that. Like, okay, I can just trust that even though I start out and they're looking really bad, and for a long time I actually even try to keep them looking not great.
What do you mean by that? If I can just, could you like say a little more about what is bad? Or...
Okay, so I guess I mean, like, I know that it's not, so I'll start out with like a wash or something, or some marks, and sometimes I'm drawing starting with like a seed image from a drawing or a collage, but then I'll kind of, I know that has to transform in some way, and it will transform, but if I can keep it as kind of problematic, I would say, like the word is bugging me for as long as possible, then I feels like there's still, I can keep the detachment from becoming, like I can stay detached enough that I can keep making more marks, so that I can keep going, you know? And so if it starts to look too good, or if I'm happy with what the image that shows up early on, that did happen with the one that's called Milk Machine on the back, that the form of it and the image arrived really quickly, and so I did work on it for over a year and a half, but very, very, like, almost preciously, you know, like little tiny bits at a time, because I didn't want to lose that initial image. I think that's what I mean. Just
yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying it. But you know, that's a question, like, I'm curious to hear more. Your work is very beautiful, like the colors, just like a delight, you know, to the eye. And you said the word precious, but I don't feel they're precious. Like, we all know paintings that are like beautiful and precious, but don't get that sense, even though you're using like color that's just like luscious, you know?
Thank you. My mom says that my paintings are too dark. Too dark.
I mean, you know, I think of like Bonnard, you know, they have that kind of luminous magic of color. So, but I don't get a sense that they're precious. And so what you're saying of like, you keep them ugly, or I don't know what the right word is, you keep them uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is to find some kind of beauty, but I do like, I don't ever want to kind of repeat myself. So if I'm doing something where I think, okay, I've pulled this trick before, then I try and like do something in the opposite direction, or it's just this personal thing that I want to keep discovering. So, but I also really love about painting in general that paintings are just kind of awkward. They are, like, I was at the National Gallery visiting family, I was in Ottawa visiting family about a month ago, and even the most sort of revered artworks that are paintings hanging on the wall, if you spend enough time, they all start to feel like there's a very beautiful quality of awkwardness in them. Because it's like, it's a human hand that has had to build this thing out of clunky color, you know, like actual material color. And so even the most polished works, if, you know, I like that. It's like the human thing of what painting is. But thank you for bringing up Bonnard, because I mean, I love that's the aspiration, but I'm not no way comparing. I wouldn't compare these. But.
For me, I see it immediately, but but like I see you, not yeah. So tell me about the plants. I have to admit that's not what leapt to my mind.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first person to say that. Well, okay, so...
And the Goldthread.
Yeah. So the title of the show is Goldthread, which references a wildflower that grows here. It's the name of a wildflower, a very tiny one that grows in the spring. I think because I was interested, I'm interested in this thing of all of the invisible things that feed into objects, and when we pay attention to objects, that kind of resonance that the object eventually has. And so I was already doing that and thinking about, objects in that way. And then when the pandemic, this was maybe just before the pandemic, I had started going for walks, and something started happening with nature. I was just paying more attention and taking photos of lichen and rocks and plants really up close, kind of like zooming way in. And I just got curious about that. And then I had been investigating plants for with the kind of a medicinal purpose, or herbalism and for health reasons. And so there's this idea of the doctrine of signatures that a lot of herbalists follow, that talks about the form of the plant as being a way to read the energetic gesture of the plants, and that the healing properties can be seen in its form. So that got me curious, or it kind of felt like a parallel with painting and the way I like to think about the paintings, because there's maybe a surface image, but I'm more interested in the gesture, like this quality of feeling that maybe the image is one layer of it, but it's like everything else that's gone into making the painting, like all the time and the thoughts and feelings and decisions, all of that is like building the totality of the painting, and it's there somehow in that like relationship. And so this with the plants and herbalism and this new relationship that was kind of unfolding for me, I really thought, well, okay, what is that, and what are these more subtle, I'm not sure how to talk about it, but the subtle things that are kind of the scaffolding around these plants in terms of the mythologies associated with them, their Latin names, their histories, all of those things are giving it this kind of, also its growth and its biological, like conditions of its growth. So whether it can survive in the cold or blooms late, or all of those things add up in herbalism to a certain gesture. And so, yeah, I just felt like, okay, there's territory here that I want to investigate. I wasn't sure how to approach it, but that's when I also thought, well, I would like to try and make bigger paintings, because I've been making paintings more along the sides, on the left and behind there. And so that was part of the grant proposal, was to make bigger work, kind of focusing on the natural landscape here, but knowing that the result wouldn't be sort of landscape or portraits of plants. They are kind of portraits of plants in like their other qualities, like the associated things. So it's like that thing of the conditions that give rise to manifestation and form. And then also this thing of tapping into like when we've all paid attention to certain things, we kind of feed them energetically, and they grow in a certain way. And like Carl Jung talked about this, the collective and these archetypes and everything else. So I was kind of interested in all of that, and I did a bit of an arbitrary thing with a few of the paintings, which was I had done profiles of different plants. So Goldthread was one of them, and well, a number of them. And then I thought, well, okay, if I take those two profiles and I were to merge them in a painting, what would that gesture look like in the painting? And so that's really, this is called Gold Rattle, and it's gold thread in conversation with yellow rattle. But what ended up happening was I was picking up stories and associated things. So some of the imagery that you see comes from, it led to connections that finally came to a painting, which is the liberation of St. Peter in the, because one of the flowers is associated with St. Peter in the folklore. So it led me to this painting that's in the Sistine, in the Vatican, and it's above a door in an architectural space, and it's a trompe-l'oeil, so on either side there are stairs, and then there's a scene where St. Peter is in jail, and it's, I guess if you know the Bible story, he's visited by an angel in the night and freed. His chains are freed, or released, and he's able to get out of jail. And so what I was interested in was there was a kind of grid. I was interested in the painting and that it was in an architectural space and was engaging that. And then it was referencing some of the things in that painting referenced like grids that I had been working with in other paintings. So I'll kind of go, like, there's a log of forms and images that I then kind of tap into and say, okay, that's interesting for me to explore or push or something.
Welcome back. We had my own technical difficulties in the public recording. So we're back here with Erin Hunt. In some ways, I'm glad because this gives us a chance to talk, just the two of us, less publicly, so we could get a little more specific about some of the work in the show. I have a video that we can look at. Yeah, but I actually was thinking about, so when we the camera went out, which I realize is my own not knowing my camera well enough. I could have restarted it and it would have given us another half hour of recording. But anyway, that's in the past.
Okay.
So what wasn't recorded was the Q&A with the people who were in the gallery. And I wondered if we could maybe pick up one of the threads that came up in that conversation, which to me was a bit of a surprise that it was brought forward as something at all, actually, which is we had talked about this idea of a kind of sacredness in the work, in your attitude towards the work and the plants that inspire the work. And someone in the audience was kind of, I don't know, it might be too strong to say, but like taken aback by by this idea of sacred, introducing the sacred. I was surprised because to me it's a bit like, I guess it's so my realm that I don't even think about it anymore. And so you had an interesting exchange with this person about how you understood that in relation to your work. So I wondered if you don't mind just to maybe say a little more. And, I also wondered, like, in some ways I was the person who introduced that word as the descriptor, which was just because of someone describing the gallery space as a sacred space. So it might not even be your word, but anyway, I wondered if you wanted to say a little more in that.
Sure. Yeah, that was really interesting. And in the moment, I think I didn't maybe realize that this person was thinking of the word sacred in a very particular way, maybe thought maybe in the same realm as using the word God. Like it triggered something, I think, maybe for him. that I wasn't really, because similarly, it's my realm too now. So I feel like there's no problem using those words because I feel like I don't have so much conditioning attached to it anymore. Like I can kind of, it's sort of like you talked about this a little while ago about, having to reject painting to then come back to it. It's kind of like I went through that process with maybe words like sacred and God. And now I feel like, oh, it's just the natural process. It's a natural way of feeling yourself in the world. And so I think that's where I was coming from when I was in that exchange. And I was really trying to understand, or I don't know, it just, yeah, I think what I said was, I don't actually, I'm not saying that my work is sacred, that, like that I'm making sacred art in the sense of like a sacred art in a church, like an icon painting, let's say. I'm just saying that my relationship, the way that I'm approaching everything and the way I kind of feel everything is that everything that arises feels very sacred. And that it's worthy of being looked at or paid attention to. And so that was really it's a very simple, basic point, I think, but I wasn't able to engage in a dialogue about maybe an intellectual idea of a word like sacred in the sense of where it fits in the context of like the history of religion or something. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, as you say that for some people that just that word alone is a wall will go up because of their conditioning or experiences around religion. But what I hear is what you're talking about is separate from some kind of organized religious idea around sacred, and more a relationship that you have with the world, which is reflected in the work, so that the paintings, I don't know, is it too much to say the paintings, the process of making the paintings is an expression of that?
I think it's sort of the attitude of approach or something, Oh, you froze a little bit. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It says my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, well, I can hear you right now.
Is that
Can,
okay?
Yeah.
I'll keep going. Yeah, it's just that this thing we keep coming back to of trust and just really feeling in the body and in when I'm working in the space, feeling that I don't need to discount. Sure, I'm having resonance with certain things that I'm drawn to kind of pay attention to. And that's I just see that that's me wanting to pay attention to something is of value because I'm part of everything. I mean, that's kind of, I guess. And so the way that the work unfolds is very much in that attitude, I guess. And I mean, it's actually not a grandiose thing. It's just actually very plain, it's sort of the easiest thing to do. It's just, it's not so complex, but I guess to say it's a sacred process is just honoring that, I view life that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes me think about like, when we're not resisting, then things are easy. And like you say, that sounds sort of like, okay, duh, but
Yeah, yeah.
but like how much of life do we go through actually like resisting what's actually happening, like all the friction
Exactly.
that comes from, I don't like it like this. I wish it was,
Yeah, and
yeah.
maybe I use the word sacred because I have the contrast of I actually did live in a way where I didn't see that. And so, yeah, now it does feel like, oh, everything is sacred. Everything is, life. It's life moving, moving, moving. So yeah, I mean, I did before I was contracted, I had the kind of walls and resistance to certain ways of working, certain things that the rules of, oh, that's okay, that's not okay. You can't make that kind of work, or you need to know, you need to have some kind of a plan, all of these things were like just all of those rigid structures that are slowly feel like they're slowly relaxing or something.
So was there a moment of a turning point for you where did something happen where you were like, oh,
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, it was actually it was a pretty major health crisis about 5 years ago. And it was that I had a pretty big kind of like shift in perspective. And so there is a feeling of like, oh, that was my life before, and now this is
mm,
uh yeah, it was dramatic and confusing. And so, from that point until now, I've been in a process of kind of decoding, like trying to understand, it was pretty expansive, let's just say. And so,
mm.
uh, I feel like I'm trying to integrate what happened because it was also tied in with like the body and mind not being well, but also a very deep sort of opening, to everything. So it's been very hard to navigate, like, well, then what is illness? What does that mean? Like, is that illness? That it shifted my perspective and had a transformational positive outcome. Like so it's helped me to the fact that it was such a deep or expansive experience actually helped me heal because it was sort of I was able to put it all in a bigger perspective, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's so fascinating how I don't think, you're alone in having what people could say was like a really bad experience, except it's not. Like, how can you call it bad if so much really important positives have come out of it? And then like, what does that mean about bad
Yeah.
things? Like it shakes things up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, I think, also this thing of the inner experience and then what everyone around me experienced were two very, very different things. And so there was a sense in me of everything is just fine, actually. But in everyone else, there was, this is not okay. And so that also, it's that same thing in my work, like this inner landscape and the outer landscape. How can they, come together? And what is that in between navigation? What does
Mm,
it look like? And what can it be materially or something?
mm, mm. Thank you for sharing that. It's really, I feel like it's so important. I can't think of a better word. I want to say it's beautiful, but it's actually like very important, I think. Yeah.
I think so too. And that's been a struggle for me because I I do feel like it's important to share, but it's also this thing of not wanting to perpetuate certain ideas that are already out there. It's coming back to those words, you know, like people get pictures in their mind and crystallized ideas around certain words and certain kind of conditions, or yeah. So I'm feeling it out still. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, may you always be feeling it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such, oh, you just bring up something that, you know, if I may say, like, I feel like I also wrestle with, it's because, like, as soon as a word is said, people have ideas. We have ideas. We all have ideas. Let's just say we're all, you know, and they may or may not be accurate. And then it's like, yeah, things get fixed very easily and then lose the potential that something new could arise. Yeah. But maybe this is a perfect time now to share my screen and
Okay.
show. So after the public program, I came back to the gallery and took some video, you know, not being a videographer, so please forgive me. And so, you know, it looks like the video is about 5 minutes long, but we can pause and maybe it will be an opportunity to speak to some of this specifically within the works. And yeah, I'm not sure I ever actually shot video of a painting exhibition, so please forgive me.
It's better than I could do already, I know. So
it was like, oh, so I tried to mix up like overall shots, detail shots, and I have to say, maybe this is my own bias coming out, but I really enjoy that you have 2 vitrines in the space with objects that you've made, and to me they're just so like delightful, and yeah, so I could look at them all day, so I might have lingered there a little bit. So okay, so also just to say we're in the gallery. It's JK Contemporary in Joe Batt's Arm on Fogo Island. It's a new gallery that has just been made in a renovated schoolhouse building. So the space is beautiful. It really is. And yeah, a beautiful setting for your work. So this is just inside the door. Yeah, I've turned off the volume so we don't have to have the background. So this is the first painting you can see as you come in the door. I don't know if this is, so maybe what I'll do is I'm just going to pause right away. Do you want to speak to this painting? Maybe I'll let it go. I do pull back again. So you can talk.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So the title of this painting is Juggernaut. And in the studio, I usually work on somewhere between 20 and 30 paintings at once. So this painting hung around for quite a while, and I would just do little bits on it. Actually, it works that way with a lot of them. I'll just add, you know, I'll kind of make a mark on a bunch at once. And then it evolved very organically. I sanded it down, and then I would add again and sand it down, and sometimes wash it down. Often with the paintings, as I'm working, I'm not so aware of any, like, it's not really a mind or process. So I'm feeling it out, and I'm just reacting to what feels right. And I'm always pushing it as well to kind of like push my own limits. But then when it feels finished, like, I'm using this one as the example because I didn't really know what it was about, but the title came to me as Juggernaut. And so I put it in the show, and then someone asked the gallery what if there was something to be said about it. And so I had to kind of like go back to like, I used the word, the title to try and understand, why did I name it Juggernaut? Like, what is that? Because often when I'll get a title, it's that it feels there's some kind of like resonance with the word and what I'm looking at. And I don't often understand why. But when I dug a bit deeper, I kind of realized it was a combination of two things in like the backlog of the psyche or something. One was a text that I read that was part of a little story in the Lotus Sutra, and one was a physical object that I saw in an ambulance. And it's not going to make too much sense to kind of talk about it, but essentially, I'll tell you the object. I was thinking of this belt buckle that's used on the stretcher of the ambulance. It has, in my memory of it, it's like a 6-point harness. So it's like these, this central form and then these things. And in the Lotus Sutra, the story is where Shakyamuni Buddha, how you say it?
Yeah.
Gathers everyone at the mountain, gathers his 12,000 disciples at the mountain to show them the ultimate reality. And he, when I read it, I think this is what happened. There was this, it talked about the light that moved in the 10 directions out of his forehead. And so I don't know, I do this, I guess, subconsciously, this playful thing of the image of that belt buckle. And I mean, that's so weird, but
I love it.
and then so Juggernaut was, this is a bit too personal, but anyway, it was the name that I gave to the belt buckle when I was speaking to this woman, a paramedic who was working, because it wasn't clicking in properly. So I think I said, it's a juggernaut. And then we didn't really know what the word meant. We were kind of like a juggernaut, laughing about juggernaut. And then, so I don't know, that's the whole kind of weird thing. And then, so the painting is what it is, and it has a name, but other people see other things.
Well, I mean, to me, that's I think so far my favorite interpretation of that story in the Lotus Sutra. So thank you. I have many opinions about the Lotus Sutra, so I'm glad to have a new one.
I'd love to hear your opinion.
But
another time.
Some other time, yeah. And I mean, I don't know, that just, the whole thing makes me so happy. I don't know, it just feels so like, this came up, I also talked with another artist on Fogo, Liz Keefe, who we see it very early in the video, introducing you at the talk. And I think you both share this in the sense of I feel like you give us permission to, like, there's some way that you just sort of give us permission to enter the painting however we need to. So, like, hearing you talk, it's like, I think someone, let's say, could look at that painting and be like, okay, I'm not sure. Am I supposed to see this, or am I supposed to have this experience? But what I hear is like, you're supposed to have the experience you're having, if that makes sense. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I know.
The trust again, like, trust that.
Exactly. And I do wonder about that. Like, I think abstract painting can often have that feeling for a lot of people of like, I don't understand it. I can't look at it you know, I've been in the gallery space, and I've observed a few people come in, and it's a discomfort or something with just, I think it's just something that feels, maybe I don't know, it's an idea that it's supposed to mean something, and I'm not getting it, and therefore it's like not for me, and that's not the case at all.
Yeah. 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 And just to like, I feel like to shout that from the rooftops, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Maybe I'll let the video go a little further so you get to see some more of the beautiful gallery as well. You know, of course, with the windows, the lighting begins. Okay. So this is another smaller one. We can see, let me get my cursor out of the way there. Light feels like air. You know, it's very interesting seeing it in the video versus having seen it in the space. I feel like I'm seeing something so different. You know, like that is so weird.
Yeah. That I find that, well, I mean, it's a different life that the painting has when it's in an image, you know. It's a different layer of a possible experience, and it has its value and can still do something, I think, but it's a different thing, totally different.
Yeah. And you know, one of the I don't know, the frustrations when I was taking photos with my phone, I don't have the greatest camera in my phone, but is that the way you use color, you know, there's so many subtle little moments of like color harmony within the work. And what I found is like taking a photo doesn't capture the experience of my experience of being in front of it and having this like play happening in my visual realm. But like right here, you know, the little, like these little moments in contrast with this, and then you do this thing with like white where it plays on the surface like ripples on water and light, or there's always this like, I feel like this kind of light happening. I don't know if I could be articulate about it.
You're my best audience. Thank you so much. Because yeah, I mean, that's when I'm making them, I often now I realize, oh, I just have to take my glasses off. Like I can't see very well without my glasses, but I paint better without my glasses, because it feels like when I'm working on them that it's not just my eyes that are involved. And so there's a bigger field that I can sense out without like the sort of focused vision. And I hope that that's what I'm responding to when I'm making them. And so, you know, I want that to be the experience in person. It is frustrating that can't be there, you know, because it does feel like there's the image, and then that play of the surface and the subtle shifts in color do come into that field that's like out in front of the painting or something. A little bit like there's more of a that vibration. And just the cameras just can't get when two colors are quite subtly shifting or something.
Maybe let's see. Like I found myself wanting to like zoom in, and then it was somehow never quite as satisfying. Okay, so then we like zoop, thinking, I don't know. Yeah, so this is some of the wall text. Like, and I realized that's ridiculous to try to videotape. So then, yes. Such an amateur. Here we go. So yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we should really do this. So it's just sort of we're unfolding as it goes. So this is as you round the corner. Do you want to speak a little to it?
I can just say I think maybe I don't know when exactly the video cut off. I think I talked about the plants a little bit.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
The poem, I can say something about the poem because it's a Rilke poem from the Book of Hours, and part of, maybe this is too much information, but I'll say it anyway because it's the way that I work with the flowers. I will, when I'm going to sit with flowers, I'll take a bunch of books of poetry with me, and then when I begin to engage, I usually kind of pull out a book and open it randomly, and usually the poem in there feel like I can there's a kind of like, I can set up a relationship to understand the plant through the poem somehow. And so that poem came out of being with the flower, Forget-Me-Not. And so originally I was going to name the show in the poem. There's a line, still and plain. I can't remember, I can't recite the poem, but I was going to call the show Still and Plain. And in the end, I named it after Goldthread, the wildflower that grows here. But what I liked about the poem was that it talked to me. There was a parallel in the poem of kind of the way the paintings, the way I work with when I'm making the paintings. There's this kind of expansive, outward openness, and then there's a lot of movement and things are happening, and then it kind of needs to come to stillness. And at the bottom, he mentions in the darkness is God or something. And so I was kind of feeling like, well, that's that coming back to that center, that sort of formless center that feels where all the potential for something to arise exists. And the painting goes through a kind of like hero's journey almost, it goes out, there's the struggle, and then the return, and some kind of transformation is possible in that framework. That's what I kind of hope for in the painting, that it can have a kind of transformation from beginning to end, but that it always comes back to that same thing of it started with no subject, and it kind of gains a subject, but it all ultimately just comes back to one of the many things in the world that we can have a relationship or not with, or not.
That is so beautiful. I see. I don't think I really captured the whole poem in my videography, but I'm just thinking about now. I am still in plain, and to the others, I was like a wind, and I don't know what comes next. But I hear the echo of your illness experience of like two other people. They were seeing this bad thing, and you were having this internal experience that was like, well, wait a minute, is this really wrong or bad? Or yeah,
right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm. So actually, can I ask you, because you've made reference now a couple times, and you're speaking of things that I recognize, through my experience as a Zen practitioner and meditation, yoga meditation. So do you have a contemplative practice that you do?
Yes. I'll just say I have a routine, because it's not super formal. It's just more when I'm in the studio, before I start, I come in and I have some body movement, kind of along the lines of Qigong, very simple, takes 10 minutes. And then I'll sit for usually 10 minutes, just in silence. And I have a little bit of a practice, but yeah, I think I also being in nature now for me is definitely a kind of contemplative practice, because when I go out I'm not a huge fan of group hikes. Everyone here is hiking all the time. I kind of like to walk in by myself in nature, because I can't, otherwise my impulse is always to sit and to be still in nature, rather than, just keep going on a path. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, group hike is very, like, I don't know, goal oriented or something. And I think what you're talking about is completely different. And actually, one thing my Zen teacher said, he talks a lot about being out in nature, and he one time, I don't know, wasn't even a very, I don't know, it was sort of just like a very casual thing, but basically like about going out and sitting still in nature, and you don't have to even wait too long. And like once we're still, all that's wild around us will like trust us and come out and come and meet us. Like if we're still, it comes to meet us. Instead of us like out there like, hop ho, here we go, getting to the top of the hill, which is its own thing, which is fun and but yeah, that idea of like, if we can be still, then everything rises up to meet us.
Exactly. And that's definitely been my experience, and what kind of opened things up to that curiosity about the plants. Because just as an example, last night I went for a walk, and I was feeling really like not well in my body, just that mucky feeling left over from the illness I had last week. And immediately I got to Pearly Everlasting, and it was like I could sense a kind of field around this flower that was completely washing. It felt like it was just, I was just relaxing into that field, and it felt so healing. And I think now that I'm aware of it, I can open more to it. But for so long, I never even knew. I never could sense it, or I wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we're rushing past, we can't really, how can we sense it, right? It takes time. Yeah.
But there was also a teaching through the plants related to painting for me in the last year, I'd say, just a recognition that, oh, that's what you're doing all the time anyway when you're painting. The plants are sort of it's a new experience for me, but now it's sort of, felt like they were showing me, you've already been doing that. That's how you paint. That is actually what's happening. You are sensing those more subtle things. It's just that you didn't know that. That's what people call intuition, but it is like, yeah.
I mean, you said earlier that you're working on 20 to 30 paintings at a time, and that's like a pretty big number. you know?
A lot of them are small.
But I mean, it also makes me think about like, you know, sitting outside and you're surrounded by many things and kind of what grabs your attention in any given moment or, you know, time out there. And, you know, a kind of tuning in and tuning out and tuning in and tuning out, I guess. And, which seems to match this idea that you've spoken of like, first there's really nothing, there's not necessarily a plan, and then things start to appear, and even though like the brushwork has a kind of like tuning in, tuning out, tuning in feeling to it. You know, when you say that, I can be like, oh yeah, I see that in even the physicality of the paint. I don't know, does that?
Yeah. And that's not to say that, you know, there is a tuning in and tuning out, and there's also the mind and conceptual desire to kind of formalize it, you know, or to know. And so that is all part of it too. And I actually think it's a really key part, because the tuning in and tuning out, it could, you know, it could just go on forever and there's no focus. But I feel like as the work progresses, I'm sort of trying to key into, okay, what do I perceive through these kind of, through what I've actually already done, what is there? And so sometimes it does feel in a similar way that the more I can kind of pay attention and look, something opens up where I start to see, you know, the imagination comes on board, and then it's reminding me of a feeling of like the mall that I went to with my mom when I was a kid, and so then I can kind of push it in that direction. And so then the mind is connecting to what's already happening just naturally through the hands. It's sort of like, yeah, the heart goes directly to the hands and they just kind of do their thing, but then the mind comes on and can be like, okay, let's push it in that direction, folks. Like
yeah. And there's, you know, looking at this painting, like there's some bold moments here, like the red part, and that's here, and even like here, you know. And I don't know if it was recorded or not, but we did talk a little bit about how your work, maybe I'll just let the recording go a little more, how for me the work is so beautiful and yet not in a preciousness way. And I think it's because it could go there. I feel like it could go there, but what stops is like, for me, this is one of these paintings where it's so gorgeous, like the light and the color, and I cannot capture it in the photo. The subtleties, I don't know, everyone should go see this painting in real life. But like, I think it's, you know, hearing you speak, I want to say it's that you're connected to what a kind of realness and authenticity that's happening that saves saves it from becoming too pretty and too precious.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I feel like it's just what I guess maybe what I'm drawn to, in terms of, things that are too pretty don't have that vibration of like, what is that? You know, you kind of want to not know something and not kind of. And so if something is a bit awkward, I'm not saying I do the awkwardness on purpose. I know that, like, people have said your paintings are kind of like there's an awkwardness. I think I'm not like aiming for that, but I always, I know that if it's too, I don't like paintings that are too beautiful. I just don't like them. So I can't, if it gets like that, I change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds ridiculous because I appreciate paintings that are.
Yeah, but there's an edge. Because even if you think of, I don't know, like some painting that could easily be just called like beautiful, like a Rothko or something, but there's still something there that's like maybe a little upsetting or dark or, challenging, and that takes it out of just like, I mean, to be a little dismissive, I guess, just something where you would like hang up just because it's like it's pretty, and so it, looks pretty on my wall. And sort of asking a little more of us, and in some cases a lot more of us, and that is just, to me, far more interesting. Yeah.
It makes it
like,
it makes it challenging to get them out into the world in some ways, because
people want the easy one. All right, this one seems to be very unusual. Is there a story for this one? Like, I feel like the other ones is like, okay, this is the cousin, not the sibling.
Yeah, there's always a weird one in there. I don't know. There isn't too much to say about this. The two flowers that I was working with here were horsetail and lady's tresses. So maybe there's something about those two flowers that, or plants that this is referring to. There are a few things in the elements in the painting that come from. You probably saw in the vitrine the three balls, and so there's, yeah. I mean, sometimes as I'm going, maybe this is that bold move you were mentioning. The painting is not doing the thing that I want it to do, and so I will open it up to possibility of like, okay, maybe it needs something. Maybe the answer is that over there, and so then I'll just kind of like, or I'll see a form in the painting that reminds me of a drawing I've done, so then I'll pull that drawing out. And so all that ephemera that's in those boxes is that kind of like, it's when I make them now, I don't think of them in any way as like, this is going to be something. I just make them knowing that they can possibly be found items later, and that they can inform the painting if I need them, but
yeah. So this is one of the biggest paintings in the exhibition. I don't want it to be blurry there. It's a little better. Yeah. Earlier, I tried to get some of, again, this like subtle color experience that is especially happening up there.
Yeah, this one is impossible to photograph. I've tried to document it too, and I can't do it. It's dark in some spots, and yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. And this one, again, there's all this sort of very airy outdoors, and then you have this intense warm bit there, and that's me trying to capture it. I'm embarrassed by this. Yeah. But so there's this outdoors, and then this like incredible, I just think of like that bit there is just like a hot summer day, where like everything is just out, but like there's intense sun on it. And
I like that. What happened when we hung it, I actually had wanted it opposite the one that's called Gold Rattle. So just anyway, I wanted it in a different spot because to me, those two paintings have a relationship. They kind of talk to each other. And what I liked about this one was that it felt on a certain wall in the space, it felt like a fireplace. It had like that feeling that it was an architectural feature or something. And in terms of that painting, Gold Rattle, and this one sort of being the next one after it, and related to the chains, the actual chains of St. Peter that exist. I liked the fact that I was kind of in my mind realizing that I was doing something maybe in a physical space with this fireplace, and the fact that the other painting was based on this trompe l'oeil that was in an actual space with a doorway and fake stairs. Yeah, so I liked those, but I'm glad they hung it. They helped me realize, Melissa and Michelle helped me realize this is a better place to hang it.
Well, and I think I do give you the side by side at a certain point, maybe after. Yeah, so then there's these smaller, I love this pairing together because they're quite different in their feeling, and yet there's this relationship as well. And the one on the as you look at it to the right has a very Vallard kind of feeling to me, of like a dark interior, maybe looking to like another room that has some bright green wallpaper kind of thing.
Those are Bonnard and Vuillard are two of my favorites. They're just, I had quite an emotional and big experience with a Bonnard I think it was in the AGO. Just overwhelmed me. Just so it just did that thing of like, it's just vibrating,
So good. And is this the Gold Rattle one?
No, this one is called No Holiday. And the title refers to, this summer I started taking a workshop, a rug hooking workshop for the first time. I've wanted to do it for 10 years, but I finally started, and the ladies who were showing us how to do it said that on the back, if there's a gap, it's called a holiday. And I guess in like painting a wall, my husband said that's also a term. But I love titles that have that can be referring to a number of different things.
Yeah. All right, then these are the vitrines with the objects. Little hard to photograph because of they're in, obviously there's like a plexi cover, I think, or glass, I'm not sure. So these are your, is it, would you say like, not studies, but like moments? I don't know. Yeah.
I suppose I could put it in the category of contemplative practice, because I make them when there's no obvious move to make on the paintings. I have a big table in the studio and I just sit down and I have it's a mess, and I have bits of things hanging around. And it just feels like a very, very open and free thing to do. And it feels very like, I don't know, I get a lot of joy out of it. It just feels good to do it, to see colors, to see forms coming out. Like it just feels really nice. And so, yeah, as soon as I start to get heady about them, then I have to stop, because
Yeah.
I can only make them until I start to go, well, now I'm going to make,
Yeah. They're really, yeah. They're so, I mean, I love that there's also objects like, I'm assuming stuff you found on the beach or in the, in your walks that are unaltered, and mixed in with the others that are assembled. And I don't know, have you ever been to the Barnes collection in Pennsylvania?
no.
Oh, it used to be, I know they've moved to a new building, but originally it was in the house exactly, and Mr. Barnes, who collected all the work, insisted that it remain exactly how he installed. So it's all these mostly like impressionist paintings, but not entirely, mixed with objects. So they're very salon style hanging, but then there's all these little, it might be like a spoon or like a, some kind of metalwork, and it's all just kind of mixed in together. And to me, that's like my favorite way of looking at things. So I really love that you have it all in there, and it's just, ceaselessly and interesting to.
Yeah, we weren't sure whether at first it was a good idea to include it, because they aren't kind of maybe directly obviously related to the paintings in the show, but it is sort of the situation in the studio. Those objects, sometimes I'll pick them up on a walk and then they end up around. So then they do end up in paintings, if at some point, or a form in some way relates to them. It's kind of like the food or something behind the work.
I love that. All right, I'm gonna maybe, so that was the video. So maybe as we sort of wrap up, is there anything that you feel like left to say, or you want to share, or there's plenty more to say, but yeah.
Well, I think I love the way, I mean, I think it was funny because I'm pretty sure the video cut off right as I was starting to talk about the paintings as a threshold. It was like, it's like we went inside. But I think more and more about time in relation to making a painting, and how it becomes an object that we then can relate to, but it also embodies all of that time, and all those micro decisions and feelings and things that went on. But it also relates, as a tradition, painting relates in time to other paintings. And so I just, that to me is very, very rich. And so I've been thinking a lot about just time processes. So, on a walk, I was going back to the same spot over and over again I think it was like around the early time of the pandemic. And I saw that they're up on a hill on one of those erratic boulders. There was a jellyfish. And it was the strangest thing. It was, obviously a bird had taken it and left it there. But then every day when I went back, it was going through that time process of decay until eventually it was just a stain on the rock. And that really was like, I don't know, there was something about experiencing that over that sequence of time. And also the work that I've been doing with flowers since then, where well, I'm now taking it back to sacred again, because it feels like, well, things have to happen in a certain sequence, and that's related to the way our nervous system kind of makes sense of the world. And a painting just has that potential to hold that kind of sequence of happenings or something. I don't know. I want to do more. I'm interested in doing more in relation to the elemental qualities of that. And I don't even know what that means, but
Yeah.
And so like I pick up these objects on a walk, and I'm always thinking, well, this adds up to something about this experience, like each of these elements. And what can that, I don't know, how can that translate into a painting?
Well, we will see. Yeah. Thank you for this very, very rich conversation. It's so grateful to share this.
I just feel like this type of conversation couldn't have happened if it weren't you. So thank you. Because yeah, it feels so good to be able to speak openly, and I feel you're a good exchanger of openness or something.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'll end the recording, but stay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.